And now I've got David Powell coming on the line. David, wow, it's all happening in Scotland. The free ports, as Colette Walker said to me, she doesn't like them being called free ports. They're these economic zones. They're not a port and they're not free. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, they're not. They're when you hear this word free, like free schools, free zones, free cities, it's the opposite of free, actually. Mm-hmm. It is the freedom to not be accountable to big government. It is about being free to set up small states within states, mm-hmm. To install private governance and to, essentially privatize all these zones, these free ports and these special economic zones. These things are spiraling out of control. Mm-hmm. Apparently, the money that is being used, like each free port costs 25 million. That's taxpayer money mm-hmm. going in to subsidize them. Well, if we look at Teesport, Sunak's flagship free port in Teesside, well, that has cost 400 million of taxpayers' money. So that's already 16 times the cost. So you see when they start saying free like this. And we're going to do radical, things to like Teesside. Well, you've seen what happens. Yeah. The profits go to 90% of the private sector. That's 54 million made in 2023. So these are Tory initiatives, and these things are going to rinse and repeat across the 12 free ports and the 74 special economic zones throughout the UK. They're nothing to do with freedom. They're freedom from big government intervention. Their freedom to deregulate. Their freedom to make tax havens. Their freedom to compete with one another. It is freedom to squander the public sector and pressure it into being privatized.
If I could get you back, because I know a lot of people are new to this free port and this economic zones, and where does it come from? We know the Labour Party are lurched to the right, and the Tories have lurched very, very much to the right. But why has that happened? And we have to look back in history to this libertarianism and how it's infecting our politics now. Perhaps you could just give us a wee run through of how we started in this and where we're at just now with it, David.
Yeah, well, it all started with in the 1950s, and it was a response to Roosevelt's New Deal, which was made, I think, in between 1932, and I think it was revised in a second New Deal just a few later. Now, this New Deal was at a time of creeping fascism and the Depression and all kinds of criminality. And big corporations, again, not paying workers what they deserved, and just zooming off with all the profits. Mm-hmm. So, as a reaction to FDR's New Deal, you had economists and libertarians like Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek, who was also Thatcher's favorite. He visited her in the 80s. Mm-hmm. You had some very odd fringe radicals like Murray Rothbard, then James Buchanan, and British battery chicken hen farmer called Anthony Fisher. Now, Friedrich Hayek, he approached Anthony Fisher in the 50s and said, well, let's change this social research institute, which began at the beginning of the 20th century, to a think tank. But what we want to do is, please don't disclose your partisan policies, your reaction to FDR's New Deal, and don't release that to the public, because the public will be horrified at what we want to do, and we will lose our charity status. Anthony Fisher set up the IEA, that's the Institute of Economic Affairs, in 1955. And he went on in 1981 to form something called the Atlas Network. And the Atlas Network is basically an umbrella group of all have each other's backs and all support each other. So I think today we're looking at over 500 right-wing think tanks. Now, there's a new generation, a new incarnation of libertarians and anarcho-capitalists. People argue, there's a difference between libertarian and anarcho-capitalist, but we're just going to zoom in and say that we're looking at kind of hybrids of anarcho-capitalism and free market, laissez-faire capitalism. So I know these terms sound kind of big and lofty, but I dug into them, and essentially they're all about this freedom, this being free from big government intervention. Yeah. So some of those new names that have come up now, they are billionaires, millionaires, and oligarchs like Peter Thiel of Palantir, Shankar Singham, the American U.S. trade lawyer, Patrick Friedman, who is the grandson of Milton Friedman. Oh, yes. That guy is a nightmare. And then you've got Professor Paul Romer, who is he was Sunak's mentor at Stanford University in the early 2000s. Yes. Now, Professor Paul Romer, he lectured on a return to colonialism.
That's right. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, and he based this on the success stories of the East India Company in 1600. Then it cycled through to the 1800s in China with the British colonization of Singapore and Hong Kong, where in those zones, you had something like 82 free ports being set up and private governance. So you basically had a kind of a British governance on trade, and let's call it what it was, criminal enterprises, such as kickstarting the drugs trade after the Opium Wars. And setting their own laws and tax rates.
That's right.
So, that's what I mean by this. It takes 70-odd years for this new generation of people to actually implement what were considered radical, libertarian, progressive policies that would, most of academia back then thought this is never going to take off, and but they were wrong. It is taking off. It's being implemented now in Sunak's free ports and SEZs.
But it's done by stealth, isn't it, David? It's something undercover.
Absolutely.
We don't know about it till it's there, and by that time it's too late. But with people that you come on alerting us to this, we've got a foothold in the arguments. What does it tell us when nearly all of the political parties, and I include the SNP in this, who are a left-wing, left-of-centre party, have all signed up to this free ports? Why have they been hoodwinked by this?
Well, I think it's about Westminster control over the devolved governments. I believe devolution is kind of an illusion from Westminster that allows, it just gives this kind of fantasy dimension to devolution. But when it gets down to it, Westminster want to transform the country and make it, like Singapore on Thames, a bunch of kind of fragmented sovereignties. Remember, that sovereignty has nothing to do with this kind of patriotic version that the Leave campaign touted. It has nothing to do with that. We're talking about corporate sovereignty. So, just go on to Sunak's father-in-law's website, Emphasis. Corporate sovereignty and corporate governance is plastered all over their website. So he's basically, importing this kind of private governance, and the corporations know best and the markets will self-regulate. Well, when you've got Brexit Britain and outright deregulation happening across the entire infrastructure,
perfect.
Housing, NHS, all public services, massive danger coming.
I'm telling you.
They can do what they like. They can do what they like because they're setting their own laws. We will make our own laws. Those laws are not for the benefit of you and your families. It's for the benefit of the 1%.
That's right. If we could draw back a wee bit, David, you said that Rishi Sunak went to Stanford University and was taught about colonialism. He's now adopting all what he learnt and putting it into practice. We've now got these people in the political parties, whereas before they might have been lobbyists or something, or just, at the edges. But now we've got them in the political parties. We're under real danger because Rishi Sunak, on his, I don't know how red a herring this is, but to get the Rwanda deal through, he's got to make sure that we're out of the European Convention of Human Rights. Now, if we stop there a second, just let's think about what that means. That's every part of our human rights gone. The right to a lawyer, in a free lawyer that speaks your language, the right to fresh air, the right to live, the right to have a family, all those kind of things written down will be gone. And now we've already seen the Supreme Court being watered down because Rishi Sunak doesn't like their interference. And he's talking about sovereignty all over the place, British sovereignty. Let's kneel down on that, because what kind of sovereignty is he talking about, David?
Corporate sovereignty. He's talking about
there you go.
Multinationals, both foreign and domestic. And if we can give some examples there's DP World, who are based in Dubai. They had the P&O scandal,
That's right,
where they sacked 800 workers overnight. They did this through the trick of the zone.
That's right.
So this is a problem. Workers were rehired, but at half the wages.
Lower wages.
This is the trick of the zone. You're in different jurisdictions and different territories. So what is worrying is that, say, a domestic corporation like Peel Group in Liverpool. I think it's also, you see them. They're going to use these same tactics. They're going to see that the power of the size of these logistic companies, all across the world, it is huge. It's very worrying. So again, within the zone, workers' rights, surveillance tactics, that's going to be far more sharp and apparently workers, they have to sign in the worst zones in the world. Now I'm also referring to China and Singapore and places like this. Have to sign contracts that they will not be disruptive, so there are no unions. The TUC and the RMT are dead against free ports, so you can look on their websites. They're very concerned about this prohibition of protest, of any kind of dissent whatsoever. The other problem is the amount of money that's going in is not enough for long-term sustainability. Like I said earlier, 25 million per free port. That's 300 million for 12 free ports. Then there's 74 zones. That's 80 million each. That's 5.92 billion. And then just go back to that big flagship free port in Teesside. 400 million is cost the taxpayer, 16 times more than the original cost. And then the profits, they just start going up. This public-private partnership, PPP, based on the PFI thing, it's just accelerating. There is something called accelerationism. It's a kind of theory, but this is the problem. It's being put into practice, where both parties conflate their ideologies to intensify capital accumulation.
That's right.
Now they do this by sabotaging infrastructure. This is where it's going. You just throw a spanner in the works. All the councils collapsing. I mean, Both has already said we're going to sell off council assets. Right, asset strip councils' assets. There's 192 English councils with higher debts than Birmingham, which was issued with an S114, which is technically bankruptcy. So this thing of the worst thing I see that can be happening is instead of mayors, you're going to have CEOs running constituencies. And now I think that when the Tories are kicked out, they've got these kind of feudal landlord type positions to go in with these CEOs. That's what I suspect is going to happen, because their track record on squandering public money, on the post office scandal, on the PPE,
all over.
It's smash and grab.
It is.
What I don't understand is this kind of stealth kind of tactic that the MSM are not touching.
Well,
it's based on a kind of a confusion that's going on. People are saying, it's going to be charter cities. It could well be charter cities at the end of the day. A free port is not a charter city. A free port is a port. It's about logistics. It's about freight and transshipment.
Right.
Professor Alfred goes on about this. He's really good.
He is, yeah.
And then a special economic zone is a designated geographic area that can also set its own laws. A bit like the ERG and the IEA are parties within parties, and SEZ is like a state within a state.
Yeah, and it's publicly funded.
So this is the problem, and the devolved governments they've just. I read the transcripts from Mark Drakeford's. When he was asked, the parliamentary transcripts, when he was asked about the dangers, and he knew the dangers. He knew that there are these kind of the models that these SEZs and free ports are built on are Singapore. So Singapore on Thames,
Yeah.
So there's some shady characters in the background who absolutely should be exposed. It's people like Shankar Singham, a U.S. trade lawyer who is also sits on boards of what they governance consultancy.
Oh, they give themselves great titles, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like Locus Economica, Pronomus Capital, Politath Consulting, and again, those names I mentioned earlier. This new generation, people like Patrick Friedman and Peter Thiel. That Peter Thiel gave a seed funding to set up Pronomus Capital.
Yeah.
Right, Patrick Friedman. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want people to kind of Google those names, and you can see videos of these people talking about what they want.
I did.
How to install private governance in countries that they say, oh, we will lift them out of poverty. It's not. It's a conceit. It's a lie.
It's an obvious lie. I did look at some of these YouTube clips, and when you watch them, they do sound very authoritative. They make something so small take to mean something so important. And they cover up their tracks, and it's all the paves are all the pavements are all paved with gold wherever they go, and there's opportunities, and there's all excitement and adventure and all this kind of language. But when you bear it down, David, it's a handful of change. There's nothing much there of what he's talking about, but. He's got a full audience. He's got the hits on his YouTube channel are huge. So people are taking an interest in this and thinking, oh, there's got to be a better way. And this is the problem. They create an area that's so bereft of infrastructure. I mean, if you go around any town in Scotland right now, you'll see buildings falling to bits because nobody's using them. The damp's setting in. It's a horrible place. Some are saying, most of them. And that's what they want. They want to come in here and say, well, look, if we come in, we can sort this. And that's what they're doing. And this is why it's so attractive to people. We can come in and we can do something about this. It's a farce.
It's a con.
It is. It's a con.
That's the problem.
I know.
The problem is there's something called... what libertarians use is a tactic, and they call it a carve-out. So this is when free ports and SECs carve out extraterritorial spaces from the host country and run them with private laws within the boundaries of the zones. So, like I keep saying, those zones are not modelled on the EU's. The EU SECs and free ports in the EU are very strictly regulated. There's your reason for leaving the EU. It's to make tax havens in the UK. And we all, like I said earlier, the funding for that is enough for a boom and bust experiment, but that is going to destroy, then privatise the public sector.
Correct.
Thatcher tried this in the 80s, I believe, with 11 special economic zones, Canary Wharf being one of the, the more famous ones. But the problem was, back then, she wasn't ambitious enough. But now you've got Brexit. Sunak suddenly comes up with 74 special economic zones on the go. And it's happening fast.
Where did he come from? Boris Johnson got elected. I never saw sight of this guy. Then he's in a competition to become the leader of the party.
Yeah.
And ergo the Prime Minister. From nowhere, this wee guy, this libertarian, has muscled his way in with the help of the ERG and the 1922 committee and all that kind of stuff. Man alive, their tentacles are everywhere, aren't they? These people.
Yeah.
But you said something yesterday, David. You said something really important to me. We are now, if we're not careful, we are spectators of our own fate. We're watching all this happening and we're doing nothing.
I think, if you think about both parties, both Labour and the Cons, they keep saying growth, innovation, prosperity, creating lots of jobs. There's zero evidence that extra jobs are created in special economic zones. You could say they're a success story in China, but as you know, they're success stories because there is a total lack of democracy there with all those workers' rights, with pay. with things like this. They also cause something called displacement. You can read this on the government website. That they looked at Thatcher's legacy of special economic zones, and they were very critical of them. But now it's kind of turbocharged. It's kind of being forced to make Brexit work. That's what I think. Yeah. Brexit's being forced to make to work.
Yeah, and we've got people like Sir Keir Starmer, saying, we're not going to go back into the European Union. That ship has sailed. No, not in Scotland it hasn't. We're desperate to get back in. Yeah. But the language from the Labour Party is the same as Sunak's. They don't want to go back into the European Union. We've just seen West Streeting trouser almost £200,000 from private health companies. They're wanting a return on that at some point. England, beware, wake up, because it's going to affect us all. Because if through the Barnett consequentials, David, and you know how devolution works, we get 10% of what England spend on their infrastructure. So if 10% on English, we get 10% of what the English pay on their health service, for example. So if they're paying nothing on that, we don't get anything either. And if they're getting private money, there's still no government money being put in, and we still don't get in. So the Scottish system goes to rack and ruin because we don't get the Barnett consequentials. It's a fix. It's a tie-up. And then the Tories in Scotland. It's just to educate you a bit, because I know you're not. In Scotland, we've got these Tories in the Parliament, and they're always shouting and clamouring for the SNP government to do more. But there's no money coming to do any more. And you've got and then we've got the Labour Party, and I did tell you yesterday about this woman, Jackie Bailey, who you did Google, and I hope you're as disgusted as I am about the way the Labour are going in Scotland, because these people taking their baubles at the expense of the people of Scotland. My goodness, David, that's what we're up against here. It's worse than you think, and trying to get a message out. With a absolutely supine press here. They will not carry these big stories for us. We've got to do it like this, out on internet radio, like this. It's garage radio, guerrilla radio. So we're up against it, mate.
I think so.
Get angry.
Yeah, well, I think what it's referred to as engineered insolvency. This is where you defund the councils. You just watch them fall. You watch the schools crumble. You watch it all fall to bits. And then, you've got corporations invited by the government under the new post-Brexit rules of state aid, where the government can choose the company it favours to give state aid to, right? So that's public money, right?
Public money. Aid.
So this problem in the EU, like I said, the SEZs and the free ports are regulated. They're very heavily regulated to stop corruption, to stop all kinds of nefarious illegal activities, from weapons and drugs trade to human trafficking to basically treating workers terribly. And I'm just very, very. You see it happening. You see the models where they exist. They exist in democracies where these successful models where there is no democracy. So that's what I'm worried about. They're kind of unbuilding public infrastructure to build up corporate infrastructure. But the public are the ones who lose out in the end, because the boom and bust figures, these figures that sound like a lot of money to us, and again, we're back to this unaffordability narrative, which is total, sorry to say, bullshit. That's also another lie. There is money. There's money to plow into all kinds of corporate, the corporate objective to dismantle social governance and to make it corporate. Someone like Steve Baker in the ERG, he likes to say quite often economic governance. But just imagine if just substitute that word for corporate governance. It doesn't have the same ring.
No, it doesn't, does it?
This is this whole kind of stealth thing of changing the language to make it look kind of pseudo-academic, or that there are genuine kind of philanthropic lift towns and cities out of poverty at play. They're not. It's the opposite. It's really sneaky. It's horrible.
It is horrible. There's over the weeks and months that we've been trying to push this message out about free ports and economic zones, a lot of people have got back to us and said, surely, Norrie, that these people in power have got a conscience as well. They cannot see kids without schools and getting the food and the clothes they need at an affordable price. Surely they've got a conscience. And then something happened over in Gaza, where Netanyahu, who I don't know if he's a libertarian or not, he's a mad genocidal idiot, but I do know, David, underneath Gaza there is lots and lots and lots of oil. And we're seeing people being ethnically cleansed for this economic model. Is that the extreme we're seeing of this?
Well, British Petroleum have just been handed a contract by Netanyahu's government to search for gas, I believe, gas reserves in Gaza. They've already been given the contract. Well, it's called disaster capitalism.
Yeah, indeed. I'll give you a wee bit of my history. I used to work offshore in the oil industry, and one time I was in the office, they asked me if I'd prefer to go to Israel or to the North Sea. There was two jobs coming up. Israel was quite warm, but my daughter was just born at that time, and North Sea, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. But at that time, some of my mates went to Israel and they said, my goodness, the mud samples are amazing. In 10, 20 years when this is developed, there's going to be a lot of oil. This is going to be a hotbed. And guess what happens? Over the years, they're trying to... That would have been the Palestinian oil, right? That would have been their oil.
Yeah.
But the Israelis have used this muscle, political muscle and financial muscle, and the Americans are helping them, and the British, the Sunaks are helping them, and now we're attacking Yemen. What have they got to do with it? Doesn't matter. I've got to create a bogeyman, right? So is this libertarianism? And you're an expert on this, the biggest expert I can find, right? Is this libertarianism at its peak, where it doesn't care a jot for human life?
That's possible. There are other. There's something. There are discussions about the end of capitalism, which is a bizarre thing to try and think about. But there's something called cloud capitalism now, which and Musk. I think Elon Musk is going to become the first trillionaire in the next couple of years. Yeah. And apparently, if you go online, whatever when you're clicking and scrolling, you're kind of they're earning rent from that, from all the clicks you make. And apparently, if you go and buy something from Amazon, 40% of your purchase goes to Jeff Bezos.
That's right.
And this is it's been referred to as kind of techno feudalism, so a new form of feudalism. But these people, Musk, etc., they're the new overlords. And that it's a funny thing because digital regulation is still in its infancy. So if you think back to people like Matt Hancock embracing crypto, he even says we need to have risk involved for our investments. If there's no risk, there's no big payback.
That's right.
So before it might have been gold reserves, but they were proved to be very volatile. So I think what's happening now is digital currency is going to be the everything you look at on your phone, everything you buy, when you go to supermarkets, it's all digital.
Well,
so that's the worry.
It is. But even in Scotland, we've got a really cold snap here, and I'm talking about this capitalism, how it can actually impact on people on the ground. It can leave them very vulnerable and very, very susceptible to the ill winds that blow when there's hardly any money coming through the economy. We've got old folks perishing here because the energy bills are through the roof, David. And we can trace this back to Rishi Sunak and his libertarian model. They're wanting us to be racked and wrecked to ruin so that they can come in with their white horses and rescue us. Wake up, Scotland. Please wake up to this.
I mean, I think it was Boris Johnson in his resignation speech. He talked about social Darwinism, right? This is like separate the wheat from the chaff and just let people who didn't have the genius of the sovereign individual, they'll just fall by the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Aye.
And this, I think, it's a form of democide.
Yes.
Right? That's murder by government.
That's right. So that's what's happening.
It's shocking.
It is absolutely incredible.
So I think we're in this really a very, very dangerous point in history. There are going to be world wars continuing and growing and getting aggravated as capitalists double down.
That's right.
And
that's right.
They just want to sow. Capital accumulation breeds from crisis. It thrives on it.
That's right.
And this
David.
is all, the hedge funders and the private bank. Private banking is something that is very likely to happen in free ports and SEZs.
That's
private
right.
banking.
Yes.
So you could say, it was generally that money would be offshored from the UK into the Caymans and Bermuda and places like this. But I think what you're going to see a reverse colonialism, a reverse onshoring of money in the zones. This is the whole tax exemption thing. But it's all corporate. It's all designed for corporations to benefit. The ratio between profit and wage share, that's going to
bottom out. Yeah,
absolutely obscene. Yeah, it's going to be awful. And it's about time. There's this. Also, I wanted to just pick up on this thing. Oh well, we'll do some protests. We'll go on a march. We'll sign a petition. Okay, these are good things, but something problematic has happened. The Occupy movement was a fantastic movement in from 2011, right? And you remember Wall Street being occupied.
Yep.
I was in London when around Bishopsgate, around the Bank of England, and I walked through the tents and I saw everybody. It was amazing. But there is a point now that protest is becoming a sort of a spectacle, and that people feel good for taking part in it.
Yeah.
And feel good for signing petitions. What I think we need are new political parties now.
Yeah.
This has happened in Spain with the I think they're called Podemos
parties. Yeah.
So if people who were on the marches, they saw that their marches weren't really doing anything and just giving a kind of feel good factor. So they formed their own parties, and it's making massive traction. They've got things like basic income in there. For everybody. They've got things like care for the environment. They've got things like build better schools, build better hospitals, all this kind of stuff. Make sure the taxes go to public spending. And this is the problem now. We need new political parties.
Well, do you know this?
They can't go on like it is. It cannot go on.
Well, here's the thing, David. We had a referendum 2014, and a lot of us think the vote was rigged, and we were bombarded by English media press telling us Scotland was too poor, too weak, too stupid to go its own way, and a lot of people bought into it. After that, the SNP started to get 57 out of the 59 MPs sent to Westminster. And we put all our store in this new party that was for Scotland. It was for independence. And still, Westminster has got too much power over that particular party. And now we're finding that party is now shrivelling away. Because now, Kate Forbes and Doug Chapman and all these people in this party are pro-free ports and pro-economic zones. So they've been bought out. Yeah. So maybe, and I spoke to Colette Walker about this, and she goes, no, it's not the right way. ISP have been going for 4 years, and we still can't get in the papers, we can't get our message out, we can't get traction. But it takes hundreds of years to get a political party going, especially in Britain, with a first past the post system and a limited proportional representation here in Scotland. It's difficult to get a new party here in this country, and that's what makes it easier for these libertarians. There's no constitution in this country, David. No codified constitution, no checks and balances on the Westminster government. So if we talk about trying to get a new party, it's very, very difficult. It's not that easy, I don't think.
But I think what's going to happen is that the public, they're going to fall really hard.
I know,
and it'll just overspill. There has to be. This is what happens. This is why I think the Brits should look to other countries where, Britain isn't alone with this kind of crisis of democracy and representation.
No.
So the only solution is for direct democracy, for a participatory democracy. That everyone knows that you can elect a politician in the UK, and they're allowed to make promises during campaign time and completely roll back on them when they're in government.
I know.
That's a known thing.
Well, do you know this?
So I just wanted to mention one thing about,
all right.
Because Doug Chapman Doug Chapman from the S&P, he replied to me on one of my tweets about Scottish Freeports. And I said, he was going on about, but the ports are privatised, like it was a good thing.
Yeah.
And I was going on about, you need to have public control come back in and public governance. But he was trying to use the private model as somehow that it was a success.
Yeah.
And it's patently not. It might be successful for the 1%, but for the locals and the local communities, it's an absolute failure. So port privatisation was another Tory policy imposed on Scotland during the 1990s without the support or even the consent of Scottish people.
Well, do you know this? For Doug Chapman to be in the SNP, we know it's a broad church, David, this SNP, but I think it's been infiltrated. Last night, Kate Forbes ignored my question about free ports that I put on a podcast. You're getting this... Yeah, she did. And I made the mistake, I've seen to Colette, I made the mistake of when I met Hamza Youssef. And he said, yes, I'll come on Caledon Radio. And I said, well, I want to talk to you about free ports. I want to talk to you about Stirling Directive and litter. And now I've told him about what I want to talk about. I think I've scared the horses. I think he's gone away thinking, no, I'm not going on there. No, I'm not going to answer them questions.
Yeah.
So what I should have done was saying, look, can I get you on to talk about tiddlywinks and a cup of tea and a banana? And he would have came on. Do you know what I mean?
The thing is, he'll probably just give you all fluff, in all the ports, growth, prosperity, job creation. But there's no evidence to prove that this actually succeeds in any way at all.
No, he knows. I'm up on this. I'll do my research before I get him on here. Don't you worry. I might even be calling you, David.
Fantastic.
But that's the thing. We're a garage radio. This is all we can do. We can only hope that people will come and fulfil their promises and come on air with us. That's all we can ask. We can't force them, drag them here and speak out to us. But we can, if we do get people to email Hamza Youssef and put the pressure on him, and copy your email and send it to social media, print it out, prove that you've done it. Then there's no way he can hide from this. No way.
Did you know that Mark Drakeford is going to resign in March 2024 this year? So last year he signed off on those two Welsh free ports. Is it Anglesey and Port Talbot and Ynys Môn? Yeah, he signed off on those with Sunak, but with Shankar Singham. Now I have a question. I'm wondering if our listeners know. Did the SNP sign off on their two free ports in, is it
Cromarty first?
And the Firth of Forth, right? Okay. Did they sign off with Shankar? I want to know if Shankar Singham was involved in those, because I can't believe he wasn't.
Yeah. I'm writing this down.
I'd love to get if someone can dig into that and give us some, if Shankar Singham was there.
Sign off these deals, right? I'm going to get on. I'm going to get. I know somebody who knows Kate Forbes' media manager. I'm going to try and get that way through, and I'm going to say it's all about bananas and fizzy water and all that kind of stuff, and then get her on and snare her. See if she'll come on.
It wouldn't make sense if he wasn't there, because he was there with Mark Drakeford. So I kind of think he was doing the rounds. So why wouldn't he go to Scotland and talk to them and talk about this deregulatory framework he developed in the US college, Babson College, right? He did a whole corporate development program for installing, deregulatory frameworks for economic zones. That's his speciality. He has the ear of the government before Brexit.
Was he not in the ERG? Was he not entertaining?
I think he. Yeah.
He's not even elected, but he was on their ERG.
Different things. I think he, during the Brexit referendum campaign, the director of Legatum UK.
Yeah.
Now, Legatum's HQ is in Dubai, right?
Yep. I know.
So I refer to it as the network of liberty. That's going back to Atlas, then going time when it all started with the IEA. The ERG was formed 30 years ago and has been taking charity, is a charity, and has been taking public money and is still taking public money to this day.
Yeah.
Right? But guess what? They have two bank accounts. They have a private bank account and one where the public money goes to. But they've got two separate accounts.
Honestly, it gets worse, doesn't it?
They're laughing at us.
They are.
They're laughing at us.
They are. You know this. Johnny Gallagher's got in touch. He goes, Nora, you make a good point about Netanyahu being a libertarian. That model was used in Qatar to build football stadiums for a World Cup at the expense of immigrant workers who died and bodies lie in the concrete. They care not a jot for human life. So libertarians don't care for human life. Somebody's agreeing with that one. I
think it's there's a huge multi-billion dollar program for a ginormous SEZ in I think it's Dubai, called NEOM, and isn't it Prince Salman, Mohammed Salman is behind that. And already locals who refuse to move have been shot dead.
Wow. Mohammed Sarwar.
They say it's going to be the first truly capitalist city in the world. NEOM, Neom. Go on their website. It looks like the Borg from Star Trek.
NEOM. Neom.
Yeah, NEOM, Neom.
I've got it. I'm going to do that after the show while I'm having my soup. That's my job for today. I'm telling you, David. Getting back to the European Union, for people out there who are really concerned about getting back into Europe, this is why they vote the SNP. This is why we want independence. I was speaking to Colette, and she says, no, we cannot get back into the European Union because the regulations, the tax laws. Britain has become a pariah state, and Scotland being attached to that is seen as an addendum. We are as bad as they are, even though we might not be. And the start of these I was going to call them free ports. I don't want to. Just call them economic zones. These zones in Scotland means that we are tarred with the same brush, and the European Union will not like this because they don't like the lack of regulation all over the place. That's the problem Scotland's got. And my question to Kate Forbes would be then, how can you say and promise to get us back into the European Union when you've got free ports? They won't take us. They won't take us. You know? So we're up a gum tree, aren't we?
We go back to state aid. It goes back to state aid, you know? The government in the UK, post-Brexit, can choose the companies it gives state aid to, preferential treatment. You're not allowed to do that in the EU. Yeah. That's why they're regulated. It's to stop criminal enterprise. Let me give you a little example. Rotterdam Port is one of the biggest ports in the world.
Yes,
It was in The Guardian about 2 weeks ago that Rotterdam Port is now the global hub for cocaine.
That's right. Yep.
Now, that is a supposedly regulated port, okay, within the EU. So what the hell is going to happen with these deregulated free ports outside of the EU?
Yeah.
So it's not to say the EU is perfect.
No.
The EU have got their problems, but there is regulation in place, which, to my mind, is not enough.
No, it's not enough.
So you still get rampant crime, but turbocharge that now.
That's
in the UK.
That's right. And
it's insane.
We're talking about laundered money, ill-gotten gains from all over the place.
Stolen art, gold, gold reserves, private banking, human trafficking, drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah.
Do you know this, David? I was over in Kenya. Mombasa's a very big area, and it's a port. I don't know if it's a free port, but it seems to be segregated in that area. And the stuff coming in was very, very classified in these big shipping containers. And the locals couldn't go near them. It's all done by cranes, and all they could do was banksmen push them onto the lorries and the boats that were coming in. But we were on a rig, and we could see what was coming in, and it wasn't good. And there was CAB. Cannabis, you know, and all these code names, but there was no threat to anyone there, so they could do what they wanted.
Yeah,
they could bring in anything. Who cares? This is our zone. We don't care what you think over there in an oil rig. You know what I mean? And so therefore, this could happen in Scotland. We could have all this. We could be the black spot of Europe. We could be the plague of Europe with this stuff. Come on, Scotland, wake up! Come on, SNP, wake up! And if you're thinking,
I've got a book recommendation for people. It's a fantastic book. So I really want to stress that the research I do on Freeport, it doesn't really come from the internet. It comes from actually reading books.
Me too.
So there's a book called Silent Coup, and it's by Claire Provost and Matt Kennard. Silent Coup: How Corporations Overthrew Democracy. They went on a kind of journeys all over the world to these special economic zones, and this book was made only a few years ago. So they just collated all their experiences. They talked to locals, they talked to workers. Read that book, and that is coming to the UK.
Wow,
that's the model.
I read Peter Gagan's book about democracy. That's
also brilliant.
That shook me to the core. This guy done a lot of research, even dark money coming over from Ireland and the Brexit campaign, how they were circumventing all the money going into that campaign. My goodness. And it all started when he picked up a newspaper on a train. It's an incredible story. What a guy. We've got about 10 minutes left, David. In terms of it's Scotland and the people, I know we've got Caledon Radio putting out a message, and we've got you coming on to amplify that message. But is there anything more we can do? I've got to tell people that you've now been followed by people like Alistair Campbell and Carol Vorderman. These are high-profile people. They could help, couldn't they, put this message across about free ports and the dangers of free ports? Hello, David. We lost our signal there for some reason. I had no idea. Okay. Where was I? I was just talking about where are we in this world? We've got an internet station. We've got you promoting the message with us. You're being followed by Carol Vorderman and Alistair Darling now. There seems to be wheels.
Alistair Campbell.
Alistair Campbell. Sorry, there seems to be wheels moving, doesn't there?
Victoria Derbyshire.
Oh, I forgot about her. You can ream them off for me in case I forget or get a name mixed up. But there is a few.
What would be nice is that So they've been in touch with me. I think George Monbiot was also following me, but this was years ago. George started following me, and I've done a public speaking event with him in South Devon about the Dartmoor and Plymouth zone. And there was a bit of a bad line again on Zoom, but no local councillors turned up for that meeting. So you just see the pattern repeating, right?
Yeah, you do.
So I'm really happy to take part in these radio shows. I'm writing articles. I'm being asked to do more. I'm being asked to speak more. And so with people like Carol Vorderman, she is furious about the SEZs and free ports. She is absolutely livid. Wow. So we've had some communication. She wants to coordinate with me about this. I think the more the merrier.
Yes.
My platform is kind of minuscule compared to these giant accounts. But they see what's happening, and they're like, "Hang on, none of this is making sense." And they want to amplify just as we're doing.
Yeah.
So they're noticing. They're taking notice. It's really positive.
That is positive. Maybe you can get Carol Vorderman to come on Caledon Radio. That'd be nice.
I'll try. I will try all I can. Yeah.
Thanks. And I'm going to try and get you. I've got a couple of journalists here in Scotland I've got on my phone. I'm going to phone them after the show and see if they can get you to write a piece in some of the papers here. I think that would. It's about time Scotland woken up to this. And
Happy to.
Yeah, nice one, David. I mean, you're by day you're a art lecturer, aren't you? This is a sideline.
It's funny because actually I've started making work about zones now. So kind of materialising the horrific zoning thing going on through paint, through thick daubs of paint on canvases on the edges. So it's like a kind of a border on the painting, which is really hysterically funny. But I've done some about Dundee and the Firth of Forth, so you can go on my website and have a look at those.
I will.
They're really funny. But what I think is interesting is when you work in art, in contemporary art especially, and in art academia, politics a huge vehicle for practice, for making statements.
Yes,
I'm also starting a whole study group on protest and why protest is broken and what do we have to do to fix it. I'm starting this next week. So it's all connected. Art is not separate from politics.
It's not. No.
Political is personal.
Well, David, what is your website? How do we get there?
It's David Powell. .nl for Netherlands.
.nl. That's right. I forgot.
DavidPowell.nl. Yeah, you'll find me there. It's also on my Twitter account. You can look at it there. I'm also on Instagram.
All right, I'll get you an Insta. That's I'll follow you there. That's easiest for me. I want to see some of this work you're doing. It seems fascinating to use art as a message to carry. Art is never far removed from politics. You're absolutely bang on with that.
No, absolutely not. You can't. It's everywhere. It's in our blood, politics, and that's something I think we all need to think about. Politics is in our blood. Yeah. And when it works, it's good. When it's bad, the vampires come and suck it all out. So we have to stop that.
We do.
Right?
Aye, we do, David. Listen, we've come to the end of our time. The hour has just flown past. We've covered a lot of ground about libertarianism, where it started, where it is now, the impact of it, what we can do. David, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on Caledon Radio, mate.
Thank you so much, Norrie, and I hope to come back soon.
Oh, we'll try and get you back on when something develops, especially when we get some research on your protest work. That'd be really interesting to find out what that is. All right, David, for the time being, thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.